history, mankind has had a love affair with the horse. In all parts of the world, he has adorned public places with equestrian sculpture. Larger than life-size horses in bronze and marble, in stone and granite, have been created for the great gathering places. This is a story of a modern-day equestrian sculpture. This monumental sculpture is a memorial to the heritage of Texas. Texas, a distinctive spirit, a distinctive way of life. People who are committed to freedoms of action, initiative, and expression for each individual man and woman. Texas is a land of the entrepreneur, a citizenship of individuals, a land of the free spirit.
Las Colinas is a 12,000-acre area in Texas which was transformed from open grassland into an urban community for a new generation of Texans. A man named Ben Carpenter, the native Texan who was the principal planner of Las Colinas and implemented its development, decided to create within Las Colinas a grand public place. He would give the place a unique identity that would reflect the free spirit found in the heritage of Texas. Carpenter envisioned Mustang horses running through a stream of water. Roaming the Texas prairie centuries ago, they were the vanguard of European civilization. Determined that the sculpture be created by an artist whose skill reflected a proven talent in capturing the spirit of wild animals, the spirit evident in the Mustangs, Ben Carpenter selected a sculptor internationally recognized as an eminent student of wildlife, whose bronzes were held in the collections of sportsmen and others throughout the world. The sculptor selected was Robert Glenn, a wildlife artist of Scottish ancestry who was born in Kenya, East Africa, and who maintains a studio at his home on the outskirts of Nairobi. In the summer of 1976, Carpenter asked Glenn to develop his thoughts and submit his ideas later that year. Following subsequent meetings, Glenn traveled to several locations in the western United States to study the wild horses presently in national wildlife preserves and parks, only to find that these animals had been so crossbred over the past century that they did not truly reflect the ancestry of the original Mustangs. Archaeologists have found evidence that a small horse-like creature inhabited the American continents in prehistoric times. But this creature vanished more than 1 million years ago. The horse of history was not native to North America, but was first introduced to the American continent by the Spanish explorers. In his search for authenticity, Carpenter sent Glenn to southern Spain, Jerez de la Frontera, in the province of Cádiz. Here he began to research the animals that were to be the models for the Las Colinas sculpture. On the outskirts of Jerez, the bloodline of the horses selected to be taken to the New World by the Spanish conquistadors was kept pure. The mounted Spaniards soon established themselves in the Caribbean and Mexico and in the Central and South Americas. Upon their horses, they explored vast expanses of the American West, then populated only by native Indian tribes. The Indians discovered that they, too, could ride these strange animals and that horse meat was good to eat. They got their first horses by stealing them from the Spaniards. In the process of raiding the breeding haciendas, the Indians stampeded hundreds of horses into the unfenced plains of Mexico and Texas. These Mesqueñas, as the Spanish called them, or Mustangs, as the early Texans called them, were the escaped descendants of those noble horses brought from Spain. These horses thrived in the vast western American ranges so similar in climate and soil to the arid lands of Spain, North Africa, and Arabia in which they originated. Research behind them, Carpenter and Glenn turned to the task of planning the environment in which the sculpture would be placed. Carpenter described to Glenn his vision, a plaza the size of 2 football fields side by side, paved in Texas pink granite. On 3 sides, office buildings sheathed in the Texas stone, At the center, the group of Mustang horses, larger than life, splashing through a stream of water. Glenn returned to his studio in Nairobi. There he constructed a number of small model horses in various stances reflecting the mood and motion of the concept given him by Carpenter. He made 47 different models before he and Carpenter were both pleased. They had arrived at a group of 9 horses. 2 stallions, a young one and an older stallion, with a band of 5 mares and 2 young foals or colts. This maquette, less than 1/8 life-size, became a 3-dimensional outline for the next stage of the sculpturing process. Now, larger working models were required for more accurate measurements. This would facilitate enlargement to the final 1 1/2 life-size version. For this intermediate step, Glenn chose to work in 1/3 of the final size, 1/2 the size of a horse. Glenn remodeled the entire group of horses from the smaller scale, 1 by 1, to the interim size. He sculpted the horses in plasticine, a material more easily workable than clay. After completing each plasticine model, he cast the piece in a mixture of fiberglass and resin to produce a lightweight model that would endure the trip from Nairobi to England, where the process would continue. Carpenter and Glenn selected the Morris Singer Foundry, located in Basingstoke, England, to carry out the bronze casting process. Over a period of 3 years, Glenn created the 9 models in his Nairobi studio. Each, upon completion, was shipped by air from Nairobi to London and delivered to the foundry at Basingstoke. During those 3 years, Glenn traveled periodically to England and, in a studio set up at the foundry, carried out the final enlargement of the sculpture. Enlargement of sculpture in monumental proportions is not the simple process of multiplying linear measurements taken from a model, but the complex process of expanding volumetric relations. A 3-dimensional pantograph was constructed to produce the enlarged models. Since the final cutout from this process served purely as a reasonably accurate form onto which a surface of plasticine could be modeled, the shape cut out by the pantograph was undersized. This lightweight foam cutout was assembled and fitted to a metal frame or armature which took the place of the real skeleton. Suspended from an overhead beam, it became completely accessible to the sculptor. Now Glenn remodeled the entire group of horses in the final scale. Each horse, when completed, had more than a ton of plasticine on its frame, and the armature weighed another half-ton. The mold-making process would require that each of the sculpted animals be cut into several sections. Therefore, the surface of the soft modeling material had to be made firm and durable. Glenn painted thickened polyester resin over the completed plasticine surface, which hardened in about 15 minutes. This preserved in the final form the impression of hair created by brush strokes. A portion of the final plasticine model is placed into a sectional steel box. The piece is then covered in a neat jigsaw-like blanket of silica sand compound containing a small percentage of water and sodium citrate. The sand is set to the consistency of sandstone by permeation with carbon dioxide gas. The ingredients in the sand react with the gas to produce a hardened imprint of the model. When the box is dismantled, a reverse or negative mold is removed. The mold is fitted together with others within another steel box. A hollow void is left where the model had been located. This void is then filled with sand, which is in turn hardened by the gas permeation technique, producing a positive form of the maquette. The positive core is trimmed to an undersized shape so that when it is fitted together with the corresponding negative mold, a gap of open space will exist between the two. Molten bronze will be poured into the gap. The bronze ingots are heated to a temperature of 1150 degrees. When cooled, the bronze casting is exposed by removing the metal casing and smashing away the sand mold. Not until this point can one know that the cast is a good one. Each piece is examined and cleaned. Excess bits are removed from the edges of the castings in preparation for the final assembly. To bond the pieces together, bronze welding is used to maintain a unified surface. In one case, a tail was cast in no less than 34 separate pieces before being welded together. The casting process was completed on November 10, 1981. Upon arrival in Texas, the horses were moved to a staging area where they were assembled in a mock-up of elevations and positioned as they would be on the plaza. Meanwhile, the plaza construction had been initiated and the 3 surrounding buildings were well underway. Remaining was the final step, providing the patina or coloration to the bronze surface. Specialists from the Morris Singer Foundry flew to Texas to assist Glenn in this procedure. The surface was prepared by blasting it with minute particles of plastic under high pressure. This brought the metal to a golden hue. In the past, people have tried to retain this bright new look. Oils or even pitched-based products were used to slow the oxidizing activity, which in time caused the surface to turn green, brown, or black. More recently, this coloration has found favor, reflecting our inherent appreciation for that which is old and shows its life development. While such colorations can now be induced in hours or days with acid applications, Carpenter and Glenn decided to permit the sculpture to age naturally. Only a thin material was applied. This allows the patina to evolve, responding to the environment as God will have it, like the living Mustangs roaming the Texas prairies in years gone by. On September 25, 1984, 8 years after the project was conceived by Ben Carpenter, the plaza was open for the public to inspect and enjoy. Carpenter named the plaza Williams Square in recognition of the civic and cultural contributions of Carolyn and Dan Williams, his sister and brother-in-law, a longtime business associate. The plaza has become a place for public gatherings, symphony concerts, and recreational pursuits. The centerpiece, the Mustangs of Las Colinas. In 2004, Robert Glenn returned to Irving to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the installation of the Mustangs of Las Colinas.
It hardly seems that it's been 20 years since I parted ways with the Mustang. The part of me was left behind here after years of putting my heart and soul into their creation. It'll be great to visit these old friends once again.
Together, the 9 Mustangs of Las Colinas form the world's largest equestrian sculpture. Their image has created a lasting and positive imprint on our ever-changing city.
The Mustang horses will always symbolize the western frontiers and the spirit embodied in the heritage of Texas. Together we can do the impossible. We can.